Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to event 3 of Fast Track to Marketing Services. I'm sure familiar with you by now are the team that are with me, Caroline from Marconi, and Graham and Charlotte from Ice Blue Sky, and
Hi.
Manuel from Marconi as well. So good afternoon, guys, and welcome.
Hi.
Thank you.
In the first event we had, we talked about general kind of marketing trends and the importance of marketing and in particular marketing automation. Last time we did a kind of demo and Marconi and talked about the importance of that. And so today we're going to be very much focusing on how to sell and market these services to your customers. So as usual, I just want to set the scene with a couple of slides before I hand over to Graham, and he'll talk you through how him and Charlotte and Ice Blue Sky approach their customers and how they get them on board and start to sell these services. Okay, so hang on a second. What we're seeing more and more now is what printers have to really understand is there doesn't tend to be one budget for things. With a lot of brands and customers, they have integrated budgets for promotions and launches of new products. So we tend to have a lot of different elements. These are just some of them, but we'll have the product, for example. So there's the cost of actually producing a product, then probably the packaging of that product, then there's advertising, the sales and promotion that could be done locally in store or internationally. We've then got the actual marketing of that product. That could be through sales collateral, that could be through displays and things like that. And then we've got at the end of that, the kind of collection and the analysis of data of what went on. So what quite often you'll see is there is multiple different budgets in different areas, and they're then combined to look at the whole cost of delivering that product launch or that campaign, for example. So we can't anymore think about print just in isolation because it becomes part of this whole integrated budget. So the more we understand about the life cycle of that product or that campaign, the better we can interact and we can actually extract budget. Now, if we look at the traditional sales funnel, it used to be you would just put as many people into the top of the funnel as you could in the hope that you would get some people out the bottom of the funnel who would become customers who would buy your product. Things through personalization primarily have got a lot more sophisticated. And the whole point now in gradually filling the funnel is filling them full of the right kind of people. So you can attract customers through awareness. They will consider your product. You can then look to convert them into customers so they make purchases, and you can carry on that engagement and retention. So clearly that whole sales funnel has got a lot more sophisticated now. And so people are looking to understand not just putting a whole dump of any type of customer into the top of the funnel, but highly targeting the customers that will be relevant to their product, that will use it, will become advocates for their product, and that they can sell more product to down the line as well. But the key thing that we really want to focus on today is how you start to monetize that. Now, monetize that for you being a print provider, but also how your customers can monetize that. And so we've got 5 key steps. So really it starts off with the diagnosis of the problem. So what's the problem and the opportunity that the customer has? So it may be a problem or a challenge for him that turns into an opportunity for you. We then need to a bit of a deep dive and think about the 3 C's, the company, the customer, and the competition. So we can really start to think about how we kind of place our offering. And then it's about defining audience and outcomes and priorities. And it's then synthesizing that kind of information and data so we can validate it and develop a hypothesis. So how we're actually going to go ahead with this campaign, how it's going to work for the customer, what benefit it's going to provide. And then it's a case of validating that. And that becomes validated through a data-led analysis, or it could be doing a pilot project, for example. And then it's how we embed that. So we develop a kind of strategy. And I don't want you to think of this as a really high-level complicated thing, but it could be as simple as having a strategy for how we get more footfall into a store, or how we sell more meals in a restaurant, for example. But coming out of that strategy is really about the monetization. How is the customer, if he invests in marketing, automation, and print, going to make more money? And then when we've got a roadmap for that, it's all about the execution. And when we execute a campaign and we collect the data and we understand what was successful, that then gives us a really good insight and informs new creative ideas and new campaigns that we can work with the customer. So think of this process and think of this map when Graham starts to talk through how he's approached his customers and how you can use these steps to actually monetize it, not just for the customer, but also for your own business. Now, I believe coming out of this, there's a new breed of printer communicators. And successful companies that we've worked with who have had core at the very print at the very core of what they do, have now started to adapt and add other services. So it's really about not being scared of non-print media. So really opening your eyes to the opportunities and the benefits. We see a lot of companies changing equipment and staff to adapt to market changes. They're also using partnerships, freelancers, outsourcing in order to deliver the right result for the customer. So they're not just thinking about what can we deliver internally, they're thinking about the customer demands and how we deliver those. And if we have to put an external team to help us deliver that, then that's the way we need to go forward. Also, customers, printers are seeing that opportunities are quite often fleeting. You may have a market that's on the rise that suddenly comes into decline, or customers that change. So we have to be really flexible and adapt to market needs as they move and change. And the real thing I notice is that a lot of these print companies have focused on solutions and the total communication needs of the client and how they can meet that through print and using marketing automation and other kind of social media and marketing channels. So you've always got to have an eye on the present, but also on the future, because as we were talking at the last event, customers, when they get a successful campaign, they want to know what the next campaign is and how they can progress from there. So you've really got to be prepared for what comes next, but also have an eye on how technology is going to enable different things and enable better communication for your customers. So I'd just like you to have a think about those few things as we go through today's event. I'm going to hand over to Graham now, and he can start going through his sales and marketing process and his slides. If you've got any questions during this, please just submit your questions and we're happy to answer those as we go through. So please don't be shy, come up with any questions you've got, and I'm sure one of the team can answer that, whatever it's going to be. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Graham now. So please fire away, Graham.
Thank you, Neil. Thank you. Just going to, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Superb. Okay. Well, just going to get up to. So for the start of the presentation, I'm actually going to hand over to Charlotte, and we're both going to be co-presenting this because we have different skills and different strengths. And so we want to do this as a combined approach. So I'm going to pass over to Charlotte to start with, and then we're going to be interacting between us as we go through over the next sort of 35, 40 minutes.
Great. Thanks, Graham. So I think the big thing that we want to communicate this afternoon is that we know through our work with the print sector that printers are always being told you have to change the conversation. But there's often not a lot of practical information that actually shows you how you can start to make that happen. how can you actually change the conversation without suddenly becoming a marketing expert overnight? So that's really what we want to show you here, and to share with you a case study of where we actually did that with a print company, and really just to sort of give you some pointers and some things you can take away in order to start going out and doing this type of engagement tomorrow.
So just a little bit of a readdress from the previous presentations, but I think one of the things I want to do, and what I try to do within the print industry that I love and I've worked in for the majority of my career, but what I want you to understand is, when you look at me, think of yourself. I've gone through this journey. I've shifted from more print-led proposition to more design and marketing-led and data-led proposition, which also drives print. So at the back third of my career, as I like to call it, that's exactly what I've done. So what I want you to do is I want you to be inspired. I want you to be inspired that this is possible. And I understand this is challenging because it's a completely new sense of conversation. It's a completely new sense of dialogue. But what we tried to do in this presentation today is really make it simple and show a live case study, something that we've been successful with. And albeit it was a smallish project, but I think it will be something that you can relate to, and hopefully you're inspired by it as well. One of the things I asked you to consider in my presentation, and I'm basically going to really hit this home again, is maybe it's a time now to stop calling yourself just a printer. And I think that's a real key distinction. It's almost like a cutoff point in your mentality, your thinking. Actually, what are you as a business? What's your value proposition? And I suggested last time, and I want to reaffirm it this time, is that maybe the whole industry is becoming more marketing services orientated. You're specializing in helping customers get the very best results from for their business success, and that's through the services, that's through the specialisms that you can deliver. And that's not just print. It's around all the other subsets, as Neil was rightfully saying just a moment ago. It's all the other subsets of solutions that actually the common businessman or woman needs. So I think it's, if we can get ourselves into that headspace, if we can get ourselves into that mindset where print is still a channel, but we're also going to be custodians, we're also going to own the solutions and the other channels that can bring that business to success to those customers.
So I think, you know, the buyer has changed, and I know this is a topic that's covered quite a bit. But from my own personal perspective, I have run marketing programs for large corporates, and obviously I run a marketing agency now, and I am a print buyer. And I think, you know, one of the things that's helpful is to really understand what the pain points are of that print buyer, in the fact that often they need a lot of help, they need ideas, they need someone who understands the business, who understands the market that they're in, who can help her get noticed professionally. Those are all pain points with that individual. And whereas before print buyers were very educated about print, that is becoming less and less the case. They often have lots of different types of responsibilities, lots of things that they're juggling. They often just want problems to go away. And this is what we talked about on the last event. You know, the more simple you can make things and take problems away from the buyer, the more likely they are to engage with you. And the key thing here as well is that they want great results. But that's not necessarily, doesn't necessarily just mean leads, it can mean other things as well. And I think that's an important part of what we're going to go through today, is showing you how to shift the conversation with the buyer to in a way that shows you off to the very best of your capabilities. But sorry, I was just going to say, to support Graham's point, they don't just need a printer, they need help.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think the big key message is you need to shout, I'm more than a printer. I can help you be more successful in business. And I think that's a really key and very, very strong message. Be proud of what you are, be proud of your heritage, and be proud of being custodian of all these different solutions. And of course, principally what we're talking about during these sessions is, how do we bring Marcomi? How do we bring marketing automation? How do we allow that tool to support us and to elevate us in that conversation. So I want you to feel really confident about this, because that will give you the confidence to have that conversation.
So just to run through quickly what we are going to cover off today. And again, we wanted to make this presentation really practical to give you some real solid takeaways. So how do you actually change the conversation? Because as I said before, it's something that lots of people talk about. But we're going to give you some practical pointers and formats of documents that can help you do that. How can you help your customers with data? Some of you are already doing that, obviously, but what are the options available to you there? How do you get them talking about themselves and about their business in a way that's going to help you uncover where you can help them, best aligned to your strengths? And then how at the same time can you show that you are credible in those areas, because that we all know that's obviously really important as well. Then how you can then take all of that knowledge and information and think, okay, well, how do I then pitch back how I think I can help them? And what are the sorts of things that you should be delivering in terms of help? What dovetails nicely into what you already do? And then most importantly, how should you measure results? And that's results, we think, results for the customer, but also results for you and your business. How can you show that this new approach is working so that it helps you to get internal buy-in?
Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. I think also as well, what we wanted to do was we did some polls last time in my last presentation. I just would like to review those, because it gives us a real clear distinction, and it gives us a really clear understanding of where you're thinking as a community, a reaffirmation of those thoughts. So we asked on the first poll, what were the additional services beyond just print that you believe you needed to offer? I was really pleased to see that actually data came out top in that poll. Data services at 43%. We're going to talk about the data proposition again in just a moment. Obviously closely followed up by creative, and creative, you know, yeah, it is important, but I really would like you to think that actually having a competency around the multi-channel part, being the custodian, the business that can actually assist in delivery of those messages to the right target audience. It's a really, really powerful place to sit, because once you own that channel delivery, it could be, for instance, that the client has their own creative and they just want to give you the creative to deliver. So I do think the multi-channel services, and we're talking about Marcami today, marketing automation, I think it's a really important place for you to sit. At Ice Blue Sky, a big part of what we do is around content. And I can tell you that if you have a capability around creating content for a customer, if you are within that marketing and those marketing strategies and ideas, if you are creating that content for your client, it really does root you in. So I know we've only got a 4% response on that, and you know what, I can get that based on the audience that we're talking to today, but I'd like you to ask, don't write it off, because it's still a really another key service that you can supply your customers. The next survey was about the barriers, the biggest barriers to providing marketing services. And I guess that's why we're here today. The standout one was lack of support and guidance and how to succeed. Closely followed by lack of marketing and data skills. Well, listen, I think if I can make the transition and I can sell these services, I think don't be scared about that, about marketing. There's plenty of YouTube videos, there's plenty of books, there's plenty of webinars, there's loads of places you can go and get yourself educated. And you can align yourself with consultants and freelancers that can give you all that knowledge. And of course, Procom as well. And that's why this community has been established. The lack of support and guidance, yeah, that's a big part of it as well. And again, a key part of this presentation today. So, you know, by the virtue of what we're doing today, hopefully some of those myths, some of those are going to be sort of diluted just a little bit. And more importantly, that you as a community feel right now that it is the right time to change. The post-COVID period I believe businesses will be looking for new solutions. They're going to want to establish communications and target the customers even more aggressively, even more consistently, in a better way of doing it. And right now, the print industry is really well equipped to be able to help those customers with those answers to those challenges that they're going to have in that post-COVID environment. So I just thought it was quite an interesting process to actually sort of just go through those stats. But coming back right to the first poll, and when we talk about data services, you may remember when I was here last time, I was talking to you the virtues of Cognism. And that created quite a stir amongst the team and several people that followed up, and amongst the team within KM as well. Because actually, and I think Neil really emphasized this point as well, actually, when you're able to tell the customer who they should be talking to by the definition of profiling their target audience, when you are in control of that and you have that platform to be able to deliver that capability, wow, does that put you in a really, really strong and really powerful position with that customer? And today we're going to show you, show you that it's not so scary to start engaging with customers, talking about customer personas, customer profiles. How do you create profiles to be able to walk in and say, hey, listen, I've got over 3,800 people that I know that you should be talking to. Now, what a great thing that would be for you to say, backed up with all that competency, with that capability behind you. So one of the processes that we go through as an agency is we talk about something that's called a total addressable market, and it is abbreviated in the world of marketing as TAM. So if you want to look uber cool and use a marketing phrase, you can just say, well, what's your TAM? Which basically means total addressable market. And what you're looking at here is three categories, three areas that we actually go through with our clients when we're trying to find out who their total addressable market is. Basically, we're just trying to get the profile of who they want to talk to. So on the far left-hand side here, you can see that we create what we call a baseline target persona. So the types of things we want to engage with a customer about is job titles. Who are the job titles? What are the people that you deal with? Who you try to attract? And then there has to be some distinction around company size. Very few companies want to go after the big PLCs, and so we like to get that either by turnover or by headcount, and you can see that a little bit later on some of the primary drivers there. So we've also got to look at geography. We've got to see where the customers sit geographically. Can you service somebody nationally? Your client that you're talking to might have a national coverage and be able to service that. So we need to understand where we're targeting those clients, so we make sure that the opportunities that are coming in don't get thrown away because they can't be serviced. We're looking at the various verticals as well. So it's really important to distinguish when you're running marketing campaigns, what are the vertical markets that you're attacking? And usually what you'll do is you'll break that marketing down into those segments, and you can attack one vertical market at a time for your clients. And what that basically means is you can be really specific in your content, you can be really specific in your outreach, and by doing that you're more relevant. So the content that you're pushing out there, the introductions that you're servicing your clients with, means that actually that content has got a better opportunity from converting into what we would call as an MQL, which is known as a marketing qualified lead, and then hopefully dropping into a sales qualified lead as well. So that's some of the baseline persona. We then look at some of the geography. What are the locations that we're targeting? Is it a manufacturing location? Is it HQs? Who are you targeting? Are you targeting decision makers, or are you going to go, is your route of entry that you're going to be selling into your customers, do they want to talk to purchasing people first? Or do they want to talk to people actually in the firing line who are going to use those products and services? So it's really important to get an understanding with your client of the geography of who they want to target. And finally, which I really love, this capability around Cognism, it's around creating a hierarchy. So you might go to your customers and say, right, who do you want to influence? Who do you want to target? And they might talk about the buyers, or they may want to talk to the CEO. But it's quite an interesting distinction that Gartner have recently stated, that you can have upwards of 11 people sometimes in a decision-making process. And what Cognism allows you to do, and data allows you to do, is it allows you to actually profile all those individual targets, all those different people, from right at the top of the tree all the way through to middle management and entry-level executive level. And when you go to your customer and you can be able to offer them and also profile that degree of data, and then you say, I've got 3,900 people that you should be approaching, then that's where the value proposition really comes in with data. Now, I get that this is a really heavy subject. I could talk about it for a lot longer and give you demonstrations on it, but it's a real key part to get your head around, because I truly believe, and I've seen the success in some of the things that I do and we do as a company. If you start those conversations by opening up talking about data, it's a really powerful thing to consider. So what we want to do now is we want to give a little bit of a reality to a campaign that we did to the back end of last year. And to give a little bit of personality to this campaign, you can see here, this campaign was done for the Jolly Good Pub group. And Tom and Josie there, real people. Tom and Josie head up Jolly Good Pubs, and at this moment in time, they've got 3 pubs and restaurants in their chain, and they're all based in the Ipswich region, Suffolk region, and Essex region. And we got introduced to Tom at a local networking event. He was just in a local village, and then talking to Tom about some of his challenges. It was really key that we could help him. But I'm going to allow Charlotte now to elaborate how we started to approach Tom, because we have a very distinct way now of starting to engage with a customer, to really get to understand them, to go them and get to know them just a little bit better before we propose the products and services that we actually supply them. Sorry, before we start, Neil, we got a little poll, haven't we?
We have. Hang on.
So this poll is just getting a sentiment of, if we think about Tom and Josie, and if we think about them and their business, they've got 3 outlets, but there are so many other businesses that have different outlets, different locations. I want to just get a sentiment from you. How many people out there in the community listening to us today know of businesses or deal with businesses that are structured in that way? Owner occupied, got multiple locations. Just would like to get a little bit of sentiment on that. Are the lights flashing, Neil?
Yeah, okay. We'll end the poll there, and I will publish the results for you. Right, there's the results. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can.
Yep.
So that's really interesting, isn't it? So multi-location retailer offices. One of the highest polls there, dental surgeries, pubs and bars. So what that tells me is that who we're talking to today out there, you, the audience, you've got the same market. You've got the same market to be able to approach people like Tom and Josie. And what we want to do now is we want to take you through a very interesting way of how we initially engage. And one of the things that you want, as you've identified, is you want support. How do I change my conversation, or how do I even start my conversation with someone like Tom and Josie? And how do we bring multi-channel marketing solutions that include print onto the table, but to make it a little bit more attractive? So I'm going to pass over to Charlotte now, and she's going to take you through those early stages of how we approach that.
Thanks. So,
hang on.
So this is one of those key parts that we were talking about at the beginning, is how do you actually where do you start? Where do you begin to go in front of these people and have a conversation? And I think what's important to note here is, as well as doing this with people like Tom and Josie, which is what we did, you can do this equally with large companies. I mean, we went in and did this with a company that is a chain of large garden centres, just as in exactly the same way as we did with Tom and Josie. So this is a great mechanism for you to begin to change how you talk to your existing customers, and then how you can start to outreach to new ones. So the first thing that we do is we use, obviously this is pre-COVID, so we use a lot of physicality when we do these discovery sessions. So giving them something that's printed out that they can make notes on, that we bound and we took with us to the initial meetings. Now what we can do is we can post them to people and make sure that they have them when we do the call. So there's no reason still not to go down that physical approach. But that physical approach helps you to do two things. It gets people engaged. It gets them really ensconced in the process because they're writing notes as you're talking, and it avoids that sort of I'm just talking at you scenario, and from whichever side of the coin. But also because it's printed, it actually gives you a chance to show off some of what you do, so you can make it look really nice. So this next part here, Graham, if you can move on to the next slide. So these questions are just the questions that we happen to ask in this scenario, but you can make these questions more tailored to the sort of information that you want to find out. But if you talk in their language, I think that's the really important thing that we want to get across as well, is you've got to probably move outside of your comfort zone somewhat, but talk in the language that they understand. So they're a marketeer, they care about transactional information, they care about how many people are buying from them, how often and how much are they buying. So you can start to, these were the questions we sat down with Tom and Josie and we said, right, how many covers, how many people come to your pub every day? And what's the average value of those transactions that they come in? How often do they come back? What's the difference? Is there a big difference between the value of the first purchase and subsequent purchases? Can you track the lifetime value of a client to you, or a 5-year value of that client? How much data do you have? And how are you currently going to market? So those are all sort of examples of transactional questions. And that gives you so much information. And once people have sort of given you permission to go and talk to them in the first place, they're usually really, really open about this sort of information. And you can really start to pick out the bits that relate to you, that are important to you. And then asking them about their objectives, because this is a really important step to understanding how you can help them going forward. So, do they have quite aggressive growth plans in place? Do they want to increase the net number of new customers? Do they want to increase retention from existing customers? Are they wanting to improve turnover and profit, or just one of those things? Do they want to run more events? Have they got new launches going on? Tom and Josie, pre-COVID, were obviously looking to expand their chain. I think those plans are still in place, but probably slightly delayed. But what new premises are you looking to open? What are your expansion plans? And you'll find that so much comes out of this sort of conversation. And then you can go into other areas, Graham, if you want to move forward. So asking them about how they go to market, what channels are they using? Because I think as well, it's really easy to assume when you go and talk to a marketeer that they know what they're doing, or that they've got all their bases covered. But they probably haven't, and that's probably not because they don't know it, but it's probably because they've just not got the time or resources to focus on it. So understanding what they're doing now, where they're probably having success, where they may not be having success, also uncovers a lot of conversation that you can insert yourself into and suggest things that they may not be doing. And that can be around helping them better manage their data, helping them automate some of what they're doing, around marketing processes, marketing automation, that sort of thing. There's lots of areas that you are probably aware of that they may not realize. And then Graham, if you can move on again, one more. And then the big question is, how do they split up their budgets? And again, people are surprisingly open about this kind of stuff. Where are you spending your money? Where are you getting the most return? Where do you feel that your money disappears into a black hole? And you'll be amazed at how much you can pick up from these conversations in terms of linking their answers back to stuff you already do. So it's not just about reinventing the wheel and offering all these new processes. You probably can help companies in a lot of these areas already without a massive business shift. But it's about being brave enough to go out there and hold these conversations with people. And we make it really clear in this first meeting, we're not here to offer any solutions at this stage. We are here to listen. We are here to understand what you're doing so that we can then go away and look at ways that we may be able to help you. And it works very, very well.
I think the interesting thing about it is, as well, is when you do go back and present, well, actually what you go back and present on, based on all the information that they've given you, is so valuable to them. And that's exactly what we did with Tom and Josie. But it's so valuable to them because the content you go back is all within the context of what they've told you already. So they've shared that information, and Charlotte's absolutely right. You would be amazed at how much a marketeer or a business owner will share with you when you structure and you sit down and you say, look, we really have got to get into your business. We really got to understand what you're trying to do. As Neil said earlier, the pain points we always talk about. But once we have that information, it means that what we can be in our response is ever so much more relevant. The next slide or the next bit of sort of research that we do at this stage when we go in, is we do a little bit of what we call competitive overview. Now, this is about saying, okay, for Tom and Josie, they had their 3 pubs. And what we did was we saw where those 3 pubs were located. And then what we did was we went looking for the competition. We saw what sort of level of food and drink and environment that they created for their customers. And basically, we came in on the presentation on the assumption, I would say this is an assumption, and we went to see Tom and Josie and we said, right, okay, this is who we see as your competition. Now, believe you me, when you put this part of the workbook in front of a client, boy, do they love to talk about the competition. So at this point, you get a really open, really engaged conversation with your client, because he'll say, oh, they're not my competition because they're a load of rubbish and I think we're better than them at that. And all of a sudden, the passion of the owner or the marketeer or what they actually know starts to come out. And you get some really interesting insights at this stage. And we'd never done it before, but we did it with Tom and Josie on this particular presentation. And we stay on this topic for quite some time, but it was most enlightening. The next thing we did was we then created a distinction of putting that into a competitive landscape based on a low cost proposition to a premium cost, to fine dining, to just great beer and a great place to go and have a drink. And what we did was we actually positioned all their competition in that grid, as you can see here. And then what we did was we were very brave, and we then positioned their brand and their products actually within that landscape. So immediately they got to see who their competition was and what their value proposition is. And that allowed us to, again, have so much more of a sort of a deep dive and sort of an engaged conversation with them. And I think there was a little bit of movement from the client because we assumptively went in with this. But, you know, the other thing I want to say to you about this is be brave. Yeah, you may never have done this before. The first few times I did it, I'd never done it before. But it's common sense. It's really common sense to be able to sort of map a customer's landscape and potentially their competition. And it's a great way to sort of spark up conversations in that stage. And again, you get some really great insights and valuable feedback from them as well. So here, when we were talking to the client, it's very much looking at campaigns. And looking at their target audience. And this sort of comes back a little bit down to the data proposition when we're trying to define the people that we want to talk to. The other thing that we investigated with Jolly Good Pubs was what were the possible events that they could possibly do throughout the year. And you can see there the list of them that we have there on the right-hand side. I think what's interesting here is when you're engaged with the client around these events and this conversation, you are absolutely aligned and of a valuable resource to them in how they're promoting their business, and almost like you're holding their hands. We know, we think these are the events that you should be running throughout the year. Now, there's a couple on there, the cocktail weekends and the gin tastings, retro drinks and things like that we created were events like they weren't even doing. So actually, by brainstorming some of the events that we thought they should be doing, guess what we were doing here? We were actually creating business for ourselves. By creating these events and talking to the clients by this, we were creating to say, well, you've got to be making sure that you're targeting the right audience for the right event to get the right outcome. And that's exactly what we were doing. So we were almost writing our own roadmap. Once they saw that we had the capability to be able to deliver these solutions and deliver that valuable outcome, we at the end of the day were writing our own invoices almost, saying, right, what are we doing for Easter, Tom? What's the campaign for Mother's Day? Oh, we've got a few bank holidays coming on. How are we going to drive the campaigns going into there, et cetera, et cetera. So all of a sudden you become this valued advisor. Yes, you've got all these capabilities to deliver that message, but actually you're there to hold their hand and support them on it. So you see there that actually what makes Tom and Josie's pub go round are these different customer groups that you see here on the screen. So the other thing to do is to align your customers' thinking with who their target audience is. And we spoke about that earlier in the sort of the mapping of the data. So very much you're not going to get the retirees going into the Oktoberfest, because that's very much going to be around probably the sharers and the fledglings that want to go to Oktoberfest. But likewise, the Mother's Day and the Father's Day, you've got a slightly different demographic that you're going to be targeting to actually try and get those people into your establishments. So it's as important to establish what the events are as it is to then align that with the target audience.
So, and then one of the things that we do with this printout that we gave, so all those previous pages that we showed you were printed out and part of that bound book that we were talking about. And one of the things we do is that towards the end of this is we have this, but where you see the black writing on the right hand side, that's actually blank. So as we're going through the discussion with the customer, so as we did with Tom and Josie, we were making notes on this. And then this is one of the things that we go back with. So then we say, right, we were able during that meeting to really understand where your gaps are and where we think we could help. And then we organize those ways that we think we can help into these three strategic areas. So engagement, I do want to attract people into your brand. Acquisition, converting into purchase, converting into registering their data with you, and then retention, encouraging repeat visits in the case of Tom and Josie. So then what we did is we then went into, okay, these are all the different areas where we think we can help you. So for engagement, we said, right, we can help you increase your presence on social media and increase the leads that you're getting from social media. We can liaise with local press to help feature articles. We can help you improve your website and your search engine optimization. We can help build on-site promotion and increase and improve how you do your emails. In terms of acquisition, it was looking in location to see, right, okay, once people are in the pub, how can we encourage them to interact, to buy more, to give us their data. So that was about looking at how we can improve their table talkers, bringing in posters, leverage their beer mats, flyers within the pub, how we can drive people to online landing pages for data capture. And this is where we used Marconi. And then once we get into retention, again, we use Marconi, which was around promoting events, as Graham was just saying, sort of tailored to specific audiences to improve the conversion that we were getting from those invitations, just sending general newsletters and really focusing on building loyalty and advocacy. You know, the great advantage of local business is that loyalty and advocacy based on a community presence is a really strong advantage, and something that, you know, if you do it right, can really add a huge amount of value to a brand.
Yeah, I think right now I guess some of the scary part of what you might be looking at on this is you might think, oh my God, I'm not so up on the social media or my website or email marketing. One of the things I spoke to you about in my main presentation that I gave a few weeks ago was collaboration. And I really want to re-emphasize that. If there's anything in your business that you feel slightly uncomfortable about, who around you, who in your immediate landscape is there that you might say, well, you know, we're not so good at that, but actually Jim down the road, he's got business, and maybe I need to go and have a natter with him and just say, look, want to start driving these types of solutions. How can I collaborate? Do you want to come to the table with me? Because I do think actually how the print industry will evolve is around more of that collaboration. It's about who can you work with to effectively actually combine all these services and take them to market. So if some of that is a little bit scary, think about who's around you, who has that competency. So don't just dismiss it just because you can't do it right now, as I guess is what I want to say. So in relation to the campaign execution, so the outcome of all of this that we've been talking about is in the approach to Tom and Josie, and how we sat them down, and how we analysed their competition, and how they told us everything about their business. It was about this time last year when we were starting to put some collateral together for them. And again, based on the capabilities, competencies of Marconi, so where we could actually design a campaign. Tom very much collaborated with Adnams. Adnams is a beer brewer in Southwold, up in Suffolk, and he got some prizes from them. But really, what the main process of this was with Tom is Tom wanted to know who was coming into his establishment. He had no capture, he had no idea. He knew the faces, he would wave at them, they would buy pints from him and joke with him, but he never actually knew who his customers were. And what we were able to do, again, through the application of Marconi, is we were able to actually put QR codes on this literature, posters, and on the table talkers. I have to say the acceleration of knowledge of the human race of what to do with a QR code now has really improved since COVID. Everybody now knows you can just fire up your camera on your phone and just point it and it takes you somewhere. Magic. But so that was before COVID, obviously. But the mechanics here were able to really give a distinction of a strong call to action. There was a possibility of winning something. You were able to tell the customer a little bit about the other pubs, also what you were going to do in the January period as well. So very much the execution of everything we were talking about was very much starting off at this sort of what we call entry level process. The great thing about it is Marconi gives you the ability to create forms, editable forms. So what we can do is we can change those questions. So the other thing to think about when you're talking to your clients is what information do they just don't want their names and emails and telephone numbers. Let's try to understand a little bit of sentiment. Let's understand a little bit more around that person, what their likes are, what their preferences are. Because one of the things that we can obviously do in our world of digital marketing and multi-content and multi-print marketing is create variability. So we can change the conversation, we can change the content that is on absolutely anything to make it more relevant to that end consumer. So we were able to put this form together. And again, what that enabled to do was to capture that. And also in relation to content and permissions, try and make that a little bit more fun. Don't make it so sort of corporate, as I call it. Try to give it a little bit more of a human buy-in, as we like to say. So that was just a little bit around. Sort of the process and the approach that we took to Tom. The outcomes of it were amazing. He got a really strong list from all of his different establishments of varying people, starting to build up his database. And subsequently in January, he was able to then push out content and emails and newsletters to those people that he'd never done before. So he'd never done that specific, targeted, personalized, outbound communication to people who come to his pubs. So just think of the value that that's actually delivered to him. Unfortunately, COVID's hit, and it's been really challenging times. But they're still buoyant. They're still profitable as a business because they've diversified. But again, it's through some of the processes that we've delivered that supports them to enable him to keep in direct communication with his clients. Charlotte, do you want to talk? Yeah.
Yes. So one of the things that we often get asked is, what's the best way to measure things? And typically most people default very much to hard metrics, which obviously is what pays the bills. So you do need to think about those, but they're not always the really obvious ones. So what is really useful to a business is data. So how much data they have. So if you can show consistently over time, you're increasing the number of people that they're reaching out to, that's really valuable, as well as the more obvious ones around bookings and rebookings and revenue. But it's also the quality of that data. If consumers and B2B buyers, if they are the ones giving you the data, it tends to be more accurate. So that's really useful, and you can do things like get consent at the same time. So all of those sort of those measurements around managing a database, those metrics are really important, but also the frequency of activity. So if you can show that you are frequently engaging with people on a regular basis, that also has huge value to the business. And then the soft metrics are actually just as important, because what that gives the business is a clear footprint of planned activity over a 6 to 12 month period, rather than doing things shoot from the hip. As they think of things, having that sort of distinct roadmap of what's going to be done. When you focus on things like collecting data, you generally get to know your customers better. So you get more insight about your customers. You're reaching out to your customers more regularly, so you can glean insights from what they're engaging with and what they're not engaging with, and that can help you just get better and better and better at marketing over time. But for me, the secret with marketing is always it's little and often. It's having that regular outreach to your target audience, because eventually, once it gets going, once you've done your testing and you know what's working, and you focus on optimizing your program, the marketing can deliver a really nice stream of predictable growth into a business, which obviously further solidifies your position with that organization.
So I think, thank you, Charlotte. I think just before we wrap up, I think we've got our last poll, haven't we, Neil?
Yeah, I can get on to that now for you, Graham.
Thank you very much. So I want you to just give us an honest answer. With this approach that we've shown you today, would you believe that you feel more comfortable now understanding the processes we go through? Do you feel more comfortable in starting the journey of selling marketing services? So it's a very binary answer, yes or no. Off you go. Do we do a drum roll? Have we got a drum roll thing? Go.
Okay, let's end there.
Okay, well, that's great news, because in essence,
very reassuring.
Yeah, absolutely. In essence, what we were able to do there is we were able to demonstrate to the majority, and feedback would be really good from the people that maybe didn't feel that they feel more comfortable with it. That you're starting to believe and see what we see, because actually this phrase on this screen now says, "Told you I was good." We as an industry, and I say we because I've spent so much of my life in it, we need to believe in ourselves, and we are good. I was saying to somebody the other day, the customer service, the ability and the want to serve clients is one of the strongest I've ever seen within the print industry. And that's ingrained in us as an industry, because we've had to fight so hard for our work. And we know when we get a client how hard that we have to keep it. So I think we need to believe in that. Very much so. And if we take those ideas and philosophies and expand our proposition, it means it's going to strengthen your business. So final slide just to wrap up. I just want to review what Charlotte sort of overviewed at the beginning of our presentation. So hopefully we've shown you that you have the ability, we all have the ability to change the conversation with our clients. And very much that a core part about changing that conversation is around data. Talk comfortably about data, don't be scared about it. Obviously through the process of putting those documents together, those questionnaires, it enables your prospects to talk to you probably more in depth than you've ever done before. And as a result of that, that should hopefully, and what we've shown today, should give you greater credibility. And then obviously what you're going to suggest back to them when they tell you all about their business is going to be of more value. And you understand, and they understand what that value proposition is. And obviously finally what Charlotte was just talking about is when we can measure success and we can measure outcome, then that really does make you a valuable contributor to their business. So it leaves us just to say, we need you to be enterprising, think in an enterprising way. And when you do, based on these services, you can be relevant. Hopefully today we've demonstrated that you need to be in your customer's business. By being in your customer's business, it's a really great place and a strong anchor point to be in, and give them services that add that real value, because we know, because we have those long-term relationships, you become a trusted and long-term provider. And finally, be brave. Go and talk about things that you don't necessarily know too much about, but be brave and start those conversations. But most of all, what we all want to do as a team of people is we want you to be successful. So thank you. That's our presentation for today. If we've got any questions, or we can take any questions, we can, Neil, but I would imagine we're quite close to time. But
yeah, I was just going to ask you one question, Graham. When you approached the Jolly Good Pub guys, what percentage would you put on things when you approach a new company that they actually get really engaged with what you're saying? And when you ask them about, do you have, data on your customers, have you got a plan, etc., what's the percentage of people who will say, oh yeah, I've got lots of data, I've got a really good plan, against those that would say, don't really know who my customers are, etc.? Is it 50-50, 90-10, 80-20?
I would have said it was 70% of the people that you talk about haven't got a secure and well-structured database. 70% of those customers don't know who their customers are. 70% of those customers have got no personalized or direct outreach, or able to actually capture data. So there's still a massive market out there. It's still an untapped market in the main, because a lot of people are using social media. So they're using, obviously, Facebook is a huge medium now for promoting, but it still doesn't necessarily, get you to understand the nuances of new customers we showed there with that little questionnaire. You can get page likes and you can share videos and things on Facebook, but it's still not developing that sort of really rich piece of that data set that like Tom and Josie can really do something with.
But I think it's just printers getting the confidence to understand that, when they go into a client, the chances are, if they structure the conversation, they're actually going to know more than the client. They're going to be asking the right questions. So it's not like you're going to be embarrassed in front of the client who's likely to know everything. That you can go in with, if you plan it in the right way, like you're saying, you can go in with a good deal of confidence. You can manage the meeting and the conversation.
Yeah, and you know what, those workbooks that Charlotte was talking about, I mean, when we do them as an A3 landscape document. Now, cone bound on the short edge, you go into a meeting and you open one of those documents up, it's huge on the table. It has a great physical presence, but also as well, you see the client writing on it, the interactivity with the client, and also the document itself almost helps you conduct the presentation. So if you're not that au fait or feel comfortable about it every time, let the document do the work for you. Let the document read what's on the document, just ask the questions that you want to ask the client and just get the response. And Charlotte and I bear testament to that actually you throw, especially that competitive one that I was talking to you about, you throw that out there, and yeah, you don't have to talk for the next half an hour.
Right. Thanks very much for that, Graham. Thanks very much, Charlotte and Graham, for some great insights today and sharing your kind of process with us. We've just had something on the chat from Terry Turner asking, are you going to show how Marconi helps us do this next week? Well, the next event is on the 2nd of December, so it's 2 weeks today. What we're going to be doing then, we've prepared a couple of campaigns that you can launch straight away. So one of them's, I believe, a kind of Christmas campaign that you can use straight away with your customers, or you can take that to your customers and have a chat with them about how they can use that with their customers. So we've got that lined up. We will take you through exactly the kind of process we've been talking about today, take you through Marconi, how the campaign works, how you can go literally and start delivering that campaign the next day. Now, we'll be doing that, and also at the next event, we'll be talking to you about how you can sign up for your Marconi trial, etc. So what we really want to focus on next time is to get you in the mode of now execution, planning for how you're going to go and do this for your customers. You'll have the campaigns to go and deliver that to your customers, and we can have a chat, a conversation around that. And we're going to be here as well once you start using those campaigns. If you need any help, any one-to-one support to make sure you do it right, you get a successful outcome on your first campaign, then we'll be here to answer questions and give you any kind of advice, etc. So hopefully you can all join us on the 2nd of December, 3 o'clock on Wednesday. Again, all the information today, recordings, there'll be some additional content as well. That will all be available tomorrow or Friday. You'll get access to that. And as I say, we really look forward to the real hard test, which is putting this into implementation and getting you to start using campaigns and having a go. So I hope today's really given you a bit more confidence along that road. And we're really looking forward to sharing all this with you again on the 2nd. So I hope you can all join. Again, thanks very much to the panel and everybody who's shared their insight with us today. Have a great rest of your day. Stay safe and look forward to seeing you on the 2nd of December. Good luck.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.